Welcome to episode of Sitting Courtside. Today is Friday, January 10th. I finally got the date right. It's been a long time
Yeah.
since we talked to everyone. Been a great holiday. There's been some great basketball. Hope you guys have been watching. But without further ado, I'm gonna let the man take over. Kyle, take it away.
Yeah. Like Jordan said, been a while. It's been over 2 weeks, and it's impossible to recap everything. But what has changed is there's some decent change in the top 25. There's also been a lot of teams that have lost in the top 25. So instead of going through, mid majors or like the middle of the standings in the Big Ten, I thought we could just do a little fun game of going through the top 25, five by five, with a fun question that kind of gets us through the recap too. It kind of like, touches on what has happened along with what we might think could happen in the future. So we're going to go in phases of five. So the first one will be 25 through 21 in the most recent rankings. So again, if you've been watching this week, some of these teams have lost, some of the teams have
Mhm.
won. But at 25, we have Utah State, 24, Michigan, 23, Ole Miss, 22, UCLA, who have already lost this week, and number 21, West Virginia, who is also already lost this week. Both of those teams lost by 20 points. So Cincinnati, Arkansas, Baylor all have fallen from the rankings from last week into this one. Of these five teams I just said though, from 21 to 25, we've already seen West Virginia and UCLA lost, as I said. But which of these five do you have the most confidence if you had to pick today to make a Sweet 16 run?
Yeah, I actually went back and forth pretty heavily on this one.
Okay.
I was leaning UCLA
Hmm.
for the reasons I say obvious reasons, but then maybe it's not obvious. One, they have the best coach, I think, of that
Correct.
group.
Yeah. Hmm.
Also, they play a style of play that can be difficult in the tournament for teams not used to playing that style. But
Yeah.
ultimately, I went with my gut here. I went Utah State. I talked about
Okay.
them, I think it was 2 weeks ago, whenever I talked about them a little bit. They're
Hmm.
not the most fun team to watch.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
statistics wouldn't lean this way. However, they do play relatively up tempo. They're just not wildly efficient.
Hmm.
But they're in the Mountain West. I think they're going to give people some fits, and they might get in that weird slot where they probably should be like a 7 seed, but they end up in like a 9-10 matchup, and they can give people some issues. So I'm going to take Utah State mainly because I just don't trust any other teams, and then UCLA I actually think might be in a position where they do get screwed over
Hmm.
in the seeding because of the conference they're in, and they're probably going to hang a couple losses. So
Yeah. So I agree with a lot of the points you said. I watched West Virginia last night, and that offense was absolutely garbage.
oh
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
instantly got rid of them for me. And then UCLA, they have an elite defense, but their offense is just putrid right now. And Cronin is just like he's trying everything to try to get it to go their way. So I'm going to go the same way with you. I'm going to go Utah State.
Ooh,
And the reason I'm going with them is because I was kind of shocked. I looked at their strength of schedule. They actually have a top 110
yeah,
strength of schedule. So they've actually played okay to better than okay teams, and they have the easiest way to get a top seed. And that, if you're going to make it to this Sweet 16, if you get a top 5 or 4 seed, you're
yeah.
going to have a lot better chance of getting it. I don't see these other teams actually getting there in the SEC, in the Big Ten. So I'm going to go with Utah State as well, and it's just because I could actually see them really improving their seeding in the Mountain West because nobody else is really taking it by the horns in the
Yeah,
Mountain West.
that
So
makes sense. I will say, when I saw West Virginia was 25, I couldn't believe it because I've watched
mhm.
them play twice. They're terrible,
Yeah, yeah.
terrible.
And they lost their second best offensive player, and they're already a bad offensive
Yeah,
teams.
I mean, they're a terrible team.
Yeah, I
That felt like
completely
a
agree.
that felt like a we don't know who to put at 25, so let's just pick what's a team that usually is good and in a power conference. Oh,
Mhm.
perfect, West Virginia.
Yeah.
Like, what?
All right, next up we'll go 16 through 20. At 20, we have Purdue. At 19, Memphis. 18, Gonzaga. 17, Oklahoma. And 16, Michigan State. I think this is a pretty interesting group because they all have
Mhm.
a bunch of flaws. I think it's kind of would shock people that Memphis and Oklahoma are combined 7-3 against quad one teams. And yes, the net rankings are finally out, so we can
Mhm.
refer to them now. And the other three combined are just 7-10 against quad one. Would you take, though, any of the teams? Would you take Memphis or Oklahoma over any of the other three teams, Michigan State, Gonzaga, Purdue, at the end of the season to have a better seed? Like basically, do you think Memphis and
Mhm.
Oklahoma can continue this, or do
Yeah,
you think
yeah.
these other big teams keep going?
So I have Oklahoma. I actually
Okay.
think Oklahoma, we've talked about them a little bit. They're not. as fraudy as I thought they were earlier in the year. And the reason I think they have an opportunity is because they do play in a power conference. They're going to have some opportunities to get very big wins if they can get those W's, obviously. Where Purdue, unfortunately, they're going to end up with the effect of what we thought they were going to be, which I think will hurt their seeding. And then
Hmm.
same thing with Gonzaga, but with Gonzaga, they're not really going to play anybody besides
Yeah.
St. Mary's. And if I remember correctly, they have split with St. Mary's the last 2 years.
Hmm.
So I think if there's a team that can do it, it is Oklahoma. I actually don't believe in Memphis at all. I've bet against them multiple times if you guys have been following.
Yeah.
But then the same thing, even if they do well, they're playing in a really bad conference. Like the
Yeah.
teams that have been good traditionally in that conference, they stink.
Hmm.
They're terrible. So they're not going to really gain anything at this point, even though they have a good quad one record. But that's basically it for them at this point.
So we definitely agree on Memphis. Like I have no faith in them. Like what I've seen from Hardaway as the coach, like they fail like against okay to average teams
Yeah.
in conference play. They already have a bad loss this season against Arkansas State, and they
Mhm.
lost 7 conference games last year when they projected to finish top 10 in the nation. So like I'm not buying Memphis at all. So I already put them to the side. I'm not a believer in Michigan State, but I just can't pick somebody in the SEC that I think is going to finish mid-pack against these other 3 teams because the next 7 games Oklahoma play are all quad one games, and I just don't know if they have the talent to keep up with that. So I will actually take the other 3 teams over both Memphis and Oklahoma. I'm going to root for Oklahoma. I like Porter Moser, obviously, but
Yep.
I think that gauntlet is just going to be way too hard for them.
Fair.
All right, 15 through 11. So we got Oregon at 15, Mississippi State at 14, Illinois at 13, Houston and Kansas at 12 and 11. Obviously, Kansas, Houston are always mainstays in the top 25, so I don't really want to focus in on them too much. But the other 3 were not even in the top 25 to start the season. Which of these 3 teams has been the biggest surprise to you, the 3? Oregon, Mississippi State, or Illinois? And do you think it's sustainable for that team to be a constant top 20 team the rest of the season?
Okay, so I'm gonna go two ways with this, as I always do. I love to mix up your stuff. If you're telling me who I'm the most surprised by, it's going to be Oregon. I'm the most surprised by them because we have watched them play pretty heavily during the beginning of the tourney season, and then they're going to have opportunities, and I think they're going to play really well. However, if you're asking me of the teams that maybe I'm surprised by that I think I can withstand this, it's Mississippi State. I
Okay.
feel like that should come as no surprise to people at this point. I'm big on Mississippi State. I think they're an excellent defensive team. They have struggled at times to score the basketball, but that has worked for teams in the past. Again, they're also going to be in the SEC, which will set them up to catch losses. That also sets them up to catch big wins. Almost every W you get in that conference is going to be a quad one win for you. So
Yep.
I think they're the most likely to hold on to that top 20 ranking. Whereas Oregon, yes, the Big Ten has some teams, but it's not the SEC.
Okay.
Like if they catch a random loss on a Wednesday night in Rutgers,
Hmm.
the what is
Yeah.
it? The Jimmy, it's not Jimmy John's. I always forget what it's called. The Jersey Mike Center.
Jersey Mike. Yep.
Like that's not gonna bode well for them, right?
Yep.
Like that's a loss that makes you go from 17 to 22, right? So I'm the most surprised by Oregon, but I would ride on Mississippi State to be a team that will stay in the top 20.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I almost exact opposite of how I thought you were going to handle this question. And
Oh,
this was actually my favorite question going into this one, so I'm glad about this. So, surprising is a tough word for these 3 teams because I can't say I'm surprised by Illinois because you basically alerted me
yeah,
to it to start. Like,
correct.
so I can't say I'm surprised. You basically told me it was going to happen. Mississippi State, they also started the year 11 and 2 last year and 9 and 0. So, am I really supposed to be surprised by them? They only have 1 or 2 quality wins so far this season. So, despite us already liking Oregon almost every year on the podcast, I'll still say they're my most surprising of these 3 teams. And it's basically because they lost Cousinard, the guy that went off for
Mhm.
40 twice in the tournament last year. Their highest scorer is Nate Biddle. I mean, if you don't know who Nate Biddle is, I don't blame you. He played 5 games last year. He's a 7-footer, but he only averaged 5 points in 5 games last year. So they kind of came out of nowhere with their best player. But if I'm going to say if it's sustainable, I don't know how I can really say that when they just got beat by 30 to Illinois. So I don't know if Oregon's going to be sustainable in the top 20, but they are definitely the most surprising. But I think by far of the 3 teams, which I was shocked that you said Mississippi State on this one because I think Illinois is like a top 10 team the rest of the
Oh
season.
yeah,
So
but see, I'm not surprised. I
yeah,
to your point, I alerted the public
you did.
on
Every
Illinois.
podcast pretty
Yeah,
sure
and
at this
I
point.
do think I don't know top 10 might be a stretch because they still have a lot to figure out, but they're definitely like a top. I maybe we need to go back and look. I probably said somewhere in the 12 to 15 range. That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
I just think everybody that doesn't play in the SEC is good. Their rankings just going to keep flying up because the SEC is just going to crush each other.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, especially if you keep having what happened, we'll say 3 days ago, if you're listening to
Yeah,
this, where
on Tuesday. Yep.
everyone's getting just smoked by
Uh-huh.
like 25, 30 points. Everyone did. It was like either you were on or you were off. So,
Yeah. All right, 10 through 6. We're getting up to some of the elite teams. We have Texas A&M, UConn at 9, Florida at 8, Marquette at 7, and Kentucky at 6. As you're listening to this, you already know that Kentucky lost on Tuesday to Georgia by 13 on the road. We have 3 SEC teams here, 2 Big East teams. So obviously powerhouse teams here, plenty of stars. But I thought we could get more player oriented on this one. Which player of these 5 teams has impressed you the most so far? And also, on the other side, which player needs to pick it up to keep these
yep.
teams in the top 10?
Yeah. I'm going to just say it right off the top. I'm going to drop Jaws when I drop my name for most disappointed. Just going to say it
Okay.
now. Most impressed, though. I'm going to go Cam Jones, Marquette.
Okay.
He's averaging 25 and 6. He also is adding 2 steals. That team, I think, just has to run through him. If he doesn't get to that 20 mark, or at least 16 probably on a regular basis, they struggle. And you've also highlighted like just the difference between
Mhm.
that team, home and away. But when it just comes to that core group that was there, they were supposed to make the big run last year, didn't do it. Cam Jones has held it together. And again, I like what he's doing right now, kind of piecing it all together as far as an all everything offensive player, but still also picking it up on defense.
I had no idea he was this like good at distributing the ball. Like we didn't
Yeah.
get to see it with Kolek, you know. We had no
Right.
idea that he was this good of a point guard as well. So,
Right.
do
You
you
want
want
me
me
to
to
go
go with?
your impressed
Yep.
player now, and then we'll go back
Yeah.
to yeah.
Yep. So I'm most impressed with Lamont Butler for Kentucky. He's a 5th-year player. He's almost as old as we are, basically, at this point. He started for 3 straight years at San Diego State. He basically averaged 30 minutes a game the last 3 years, but his best year, he averaged 9 points per game and 30% from three. At Kentucky this year, he's the second leading scorer, 14 points per game, 40.5% for three, almost 60% from the field. And I can't watch a Kentucky game without the announcers telling me how much Pope said this is the reason to his success of getting all these players to come to Kentucky. So Lamont Butler, who was never a scorer at San Diego State, it's
Mm-hmm.
been very impressive that not only is he scoring, but he's very efficient at it.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, disappointed player here. I'm gonna go with someone I think many thought had a chance to be a player of the year, and I just don't think he's been to that level. I'm going Alex Caravan. He
Okay,
averages
okay.
16 and 5.
Yeah.
Okay. But the guy is damn near 6'10 and only can grab 5 rebounds. He's shooting 40% from the field, which is great, but this is what really gets it for me. He averages over 35 minutes a game. How do you average over 35 minutes a game? You're supposed to be the guy,
Yeah.
and you're barely sniffing 16 points a game. That is ridiculous. And as a note to that, my big thing with him is he has got to be more aggressive. He has to be more aggressive. He's only averaging 2 fouls a game. And you say, what do you mean? That's not a good thing. If you're aggressive with the basketball like he needs to be, he should be a lot closer to that 3.5 marker. He's barely sniffing 2. That means he is being very hesitant. He's not playing defense. He's not doing his job on that basketball team. And then to further exploit or explain that, whatever the word I want to use is, like, justify it.
Yeah.
As of right now, we're recording. When I was grabbing this, there was 7 minutes left with UConn Villanova. Everyone knows I love Villanova, but they're a dog shit team. Okay. He had 7 points, 1 rebound, 7 minutes to go in the game. Unacceptable. Unacceptable for a UConn team that was supposed to be a top 5 team in the country. So I'm unloading on Alex Caravan.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I don't actually have him, but I looked really deep into this. I was waiting until tonight's game, and he played he played terribly. He had 10 points, 3 turnovers, 4 assists. He was awful in a loss to Villanova. So yes, I completely agree. He's not the guy I'm going to say, but I completely agree with you because he's supposed to be like a top 5 player of the year, and he has not lived up to that at all.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go with the guy probably many haven't heard of, but it's Zurich Phelps for A&M. He's the second leading scorer on their team. Would you think why he's second leading scorer? Wade, like he's obviously not going to be first. But it's very clear that Buzz Williams has given up on Henry Coleman. Like he's not even averaging 18 minutes a game. So
Yeah.
they can't let Wade Taylor do everything. And this guy averaged 17 points per game for SMU 2 years ago. He's shooting 26% from three and only averaging 13 points per game. Yes, they've played a top 50 schedule, but they have like this third hardest schedule left.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just going to be Wade Taylor, they are not going to be able to go through the gauntlet for the SEC. So I'm going to call him out. And that's just basically because Buzz Williams has told me they've given up on Henry Coleman. So
You mentioned Wade Taylor. He was my 1B
okay.
for disappointment.
Yeah.
The only reason I did not smash the hammer, he's averaged only about 30 minutes a game. And
Yeah.
for reasons to be, he is kind of carrying everything there and he's trying to distribute the basketball as best he can. Whereas Caravan, like that's not your job. Which is why I went with Caravan. But Wade Taylor is right there with him. He's averaging 15 points a game, 30 minutes a game. I'm going to assume that going down the stretch here, he's probably going to be closer to 38 minutes a game for the foreseeable future. So those numbers will come up. But you mentioned him. That was another guy I was thinking about that's not done what we were hoping he would do.
For most impressive, that's not in the top 25. If you're not watching, since we just talked about this game, watch Eric Dixon at Villanova. Right now, he is literally their entire team. He's leading the nation by 2.5 points per game in points scored. And he's not fast. He's tall, he's big, he's thick, but he can do everything. I don't know how he can do everything. I've really enjoyed watching him since they basically turned over the offense to him. Yeah, they're 11-5. They just got a huge win against UConn. I don't know how good Villanova is, but I can definitely watch a guy putting up 28 and 10 every game.
The issue with Villanova is the same issue they've had since Wright left. Well, it's not the same issue, but it kind of is. They end up having a team that can only go through one guy.
Yeah.
2 years ago, it was just injuries, just plagued them to death. Last year, it was just they couldn't figure out how to play together. And then, this year it's one guy. It's a one-game show, which could work. That's worked for other mid-major teams in the tournament, so it may work for Villanova. But
yeah, since the Big East is kind of down, I think it could work enough to get them a decent seed. And then I'm not really going to pick against the best scorer in the nation, but we'll see how it goes.
Not to go on a rant about the Big East, but I'm concerned about the Big East.
Yeah, I completely agree.
When Butler is competing in some of these games, that's a concern.
And they're so bad too.
They're really bad. I mean, they put up 77 the other day, I think, against Marquette.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. And I think I had the under at like 54.5. It was like, how'd they score that much? They're terrible. I've watched them.
Yeah. They only have a guaranteed 2 teams to make the tournament. And then do you think St. John's and Villanova keep it up enough to make the tournament? So
well, now you're making me think it's going to come down to Nova and St. John's, and I have a hell of a lot more confidence in St. John's.
Yeah. All right, the top 5. Here we go. We got Alabama, Duke, Iowa State, Auburn, Tennessee. And if you did not watch on Tuesday, then you missed Tennessee get absolutely throttled by Florida by 30 points. So, all right, all of these teams have at least one side of the ball where they are top 6 at either offense or defense. Of these 5 teams, Duke and Iowa State are both top 10 in both. So we have Auburn and Bama, 19th and 44th, respectively, in defense. Tennessee is 33rd in offense. Which side of the ball concerns you the most for these obvious title contenders?
So if I'm picking one team and that side of the ball, the obvious one based on the numbers you would think would be Alabama's defense. We've talked about it. Them and Baylor are playing the same style of play here where they're trying to pretend that they're the 2007 Dallas Mavericks and they got to score 90 points a game to have a chance. However, I'm not going to say Alabama's defense.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the more obvious pick. If you've listened to a crumb of this show, you know exactly where I'm going with this. And really, Tuesday night gave it to us on a silver platter. Not even a silver. It was a golden platter. A golden goose, you might say. Tennessee's offense is a problem, okay? It's always been a problem for Rick Barnes' teams. They're great on defense. They can't score the basketball. So much so, let me give you some history here, a little history lesson. He was hired back in 2015. I did not go that far back because 2015, 16 and 17 were that was him trying to figure out the program because it was in shambles. But since 2021, Ken Palm offensive defensive rankings. Here we go in order from 21 through current day 25. Offense for 2021, 85, defense 5. 2022, 35, 3. 2023, 64, 1. 2024, 28, 3. That is their best year, by the way, under Rick Barnes. Only made it to the Elite Eight. Only made it to the Elite Eight. Then this year you have 33 and 3. I'm concerned if you're buying Tennessee as a Final Four championship team because all roads point to they're barely going to sniff the Elite Eight. Barely going to sniff it. I'm out on Tennessee. We've always been out on Tennessee and Rick Barnes' team's offense. See you later. Sayonara. I don't want to see you again.
Okay, guys, we just have to say this again for the
Oh my
audience.
God.
I'm just going to read this honestly straight as I had my notes because we did not discuss this at all. No discussion. And it would be literally obvious to pick Alabama. And as I start mine, and as Jordan started his, the easy side would be, say, Alabama's defense. But at this point, we just have to say Rick Barnes' offense isn't going to win a ship at this point at Tennessee. They've been top 5 in defense each of the last 5 years, but they haven't gotten a win in the Elite Eights, and they get their first big test in the conference. They were blown out by Florida, 73-43. They have a 178th ranked strength of schedule. That includes playing Florida on the road, which is a huge boost to their strength of schedule. So for every point Jordan said, which is all the points I looked up as well, I think it's definitely their offense, and it just continues to come up in the biggest moments. They obviously will be competing for the SEC title. That's just what they do. But come tournament time, I'm scared like beyond belief by that offense.
Yeah, well, because all it takes is, and this is how my brain works, I forget things 3 seconds later. It's an Oakland team with what's his face, the little white guy that could shoot for days. Takes one of those teams having a hot night and they're gone.
Yeah.
Because they have no one to match. No one.
Well, and on their schedule, it looks like they played a lot of good teams, but Baylor's no longer ranked. Louisville's not a top 50 team anymore. Illinois is ranked, so that was a good win. They won by 2. Arkansas is no longer ranked. So literally their only win to this date that you would really like pound your fist down on is a 2-point win against Illinois. So
yeah. Well, I mean, and was it they played Louisville, I think, earlier in the year, and they struggled in the first half against a Louisville team that we thought was terrible. They have improved quite a bit.
Yeah,
and then they started to pull away a little bit in the second half, but the points there, right? Louisville's a team that doesn't have a scorer, plays great defense, and played with Tennessee. That's why, like, when we talked earlier in the year, we did the rankings. I didn't have Tennessee's number 1. I think I had them at 5 because I'm like, I can't trust them.
Yeah, just to look at their offense more. Against Norfolk State, they scored 67 points. Against Miami, who is just terrible, they scored 75 points. Virginia, obviously, that's always going to be a low-scoring game, 64 points. Montana, like 77. Like they don't score points. Like it's always going to be a struggle. So
yeah, I will say this when we talk about gambling as a whole, I'm so mad at myself for not grabbing a ticket earlier on Florida because they're definitely going up the ranks now. We were big on them early. We've always been big on them. But when we were looking at that section there, we look at players. I almost just went with the entire Florida offense.
Yeah.
They are extremely balanced. They got 3 guys averaging over 16 points a game. None of them are really pushing the metal. I think one of them averages like 31 minutes a game, but the rest of them are in that 25, 28. Extremely balanced team. They have 2 guys that almost average 2 steals a game.
Yeah.
Like they're an excellent team that you need to hop on probably now if you like them that much. But again, they play in the SEC. They prove they can play well. Same.
Yeah. I was ready to come on here if they would have lost to Tennessee, being like, buy the stock now. Like after a loss to Kentucky and a loss to Tennessee, buy the stock now. But as you mentioned, Walter Clayton, their star senior, he was in foul trouble the entire game. He had 4 fouls, 4 turnovers, 7 points, and they beat the number 1 team in the nation by 30. So.
Crazy stuff. I'd be actually curious with this. You need to definitely buy the ticket before they play Auburn or Alabama. I think they got Alabama, if I remember correctly, in 2 weeks when we did the rundown the other day of it.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's going to be every single night that the SEC plays is going to be absolutely must-watch television, that's for sure. All right, record updates since it's been a while. Hopefully everyone's been checking out our Twitter. We've been posting every day that there was actually basketball. Some days actually didn't have any. But I know you're ahead of me, so what's your record?
Yeah, so I'm 96 and 88, 52.15%. I know I said we're shooting for 60% this year. seems like a pipe dream at this point. But we're doing better. We're doing better. Not near uh the number. I'm bad at vocabulary when we do late, buddy. My verbiage goes out the window. Accumulation, not
Yeah.
the sheer mass numbers there this year.
Yeah. And I'm at 139, 131, and 4 at 51.46%. If you guys were following on Tuesday, I started out 0 and 5, and I thought it was going to be a disaster night and then won the next 7. So I kind of saved myself there because I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to be the worst
Yeah.
night ever to record a podcast. So,
Yeah. I will say my best day so far. I went 9-2 on the 4th, whatever
okay.
day that was. 4 days
And
ago, 5 days ago, 6 days ago, whatever day. Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's looked at the schedule, but Friday, Saturday, and Sunday all are absolutely loaded. So there's going to be so many
Yeah.
picks. So definitely check us out on Twitter.
Also, we say this all the time. The books are getting so good. There's
They
so
are.
many games I'm looking at, and I go through the numbers. And I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. It just
Mhm.
doesn't make sense. Like,
Yep.
it's coming out exactly with my math, and I'm like, well, there's no edge here, so I guess I'm not betting it. Like,
Uh-huh.
they're getting too good. They're getting too good at it.
Yep. And they know like that team people obviously want to bet the ranked team on the road, but now they've gotten smart enough to where that there's like no enticement to even take the home team now. Like because they're like 1 or 2 point favorites. And it's like, well, why would I take that now? So,
Also, this is something that really grinds my gears, and the books. It should be illegal for them to do this on those big games. If you try to buy a half a point because you want to lean one way or the other, they have jacked up the price, dude.
they have.
It used to be the standard for a half a point was roughly like 10 juice points or 12 juice points. So like you
Yep.
go from like 110 to 120, 122. Literally the other day I seen when it was, I forget who I was trying to get. It was like minus 108. I think the line was like 4.5. I wanted it down to 4 because I knew that's where like free throws come into play. Tried to jack at a half point. They jacked me up to minus 139.
Mhm.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Are
Yep.
you joking? At this point, I might as well just ride because I'm losing
Uh,
money at this point on a free throw. Like
yeah.
it was insane what they're doing. It
Yeah,
should be illegal.
you can't get from the 110 to 150 with anything more than a point and a half. Like that is all you'll get at that if you're going to try to do it.
And you can't even do it now. You can't even get a full point.
Yeah.
You literally cannot get a full point. And when you do get a full point, it's for games I actually think they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Like Oregon State the other night. They didn't know what they were doing. They handicapped that game at 12.5. That should have been like a 20-point spread.
Yeah.
Snag that bad boy as quick as I could. Oregon State is a quality basketball team, and they're playing a dog shit schedule because the Pac-12 doesn't exist.
Mhm. And speaking of this late night games out there in the West Coast, I really hate these like 10 p.m. starts for the Big Ten games. I really hate it.
They need to figure something out, honestly, because even like Gonzaga will play some of those big games earlier in the year. We were talking about they play like 11:45.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
this doesn't even make sense. It is 8:45 there.
Yeah.
No one's going to that game.
Like on Tuesday
8:45?
night. Tuesday
on
night.
Tuesday.
I don't need Michigan UCLA ever to play regardless, but I certainly don't need it at 11 p.m. Eastern times.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's insane.
All right. Do you have any leans for the weekend? Do we want to go one back and forth
Shit.
until we're done?
I didn't plan any leans. Really, I haven't even taken
okay.
a peeksy peek. But you do yours, and I'll find a couple.
Okay, my first one is going. This is bad timing because they just lost tonight and we kind of bashed them. But I'm actually going to go UConn on the road at Georgetown. I've been waiting for Georgetown to fall off a cliff, and right now Ken Pom only has this as a 1 or 2 point game, so it's pretty much a pick 'em. It's because UConn's missing their second best scorer. But I just don't think Georgetown's very good. They haven't beat a top 45 team all year. So I'll take the Huskies minus probably like 2 points. But if you can find a money line for a decent, do that as well.
Huh?
Another road dog here, which hasn't been great for me, but I'm going to go with Kansas and a pick 'em at Cincinnati. Cincinnati has lost 3 in a row. They only have one win against a tournament team. And I don't like either of these teams, but if it's going to be a pick 'em like Ken Pom has them, I just don't think Cincinnati has an offense, and they've benefited from a easy schedule early on, and they've lost 4 of their last 6 and 3 in a row. So next up here, Iowa at home in a close pick 'em versus IU. IU's hot. Iowa had struggled to barely get a win at home, but it's the Big Ten, and when I'm in doubt, I'm going to take the conference home team. So this one I don't love on paper, but I'm going to follow just the rules that I've seen this year. And if you take the average team playing another average team at home, I'm going to go with it. And then my last one, I think this is honestly, if you're going to watch a game and it's not your favorite team, I think this is the mid-major game of the week, if not the game of the weekend. It's UC Irvine at UC San Diego. UC San Diego has the nation's largest winning streak, active winning streak. It's a toss-up for KenPom, but they have the better win of either team. Both teams of these, if whoever wins this has like the front head track to actually be a team that could get like a at-large bid. They have the home
Mhm.
court. They have the better win. So I'm going to take UC San Diego, but I think this will be a hell of a game to watch.
Go Anteaters. You see Irvine for anyone
Yeah.
that doesn't know. All right, I'm gonna do a rundown from just Saturday games. These are all top 25 games. Um, love Illinois versus USC. I'll take the over on that as well because I actually think Musselman's got that offense turned around since I told him that they were dog crap. He must be a listener to the show. So thanks, Musselman.
I
And Illinois
appreciate
is a
it.
great offense. Um, I'm actually going to take Texas Tech to cover at home against Iowa State.
I like
Texas
that
Tech
one
is a
too.
different team at home, and they play tremendous defense. They play a rough style of play. So I like them against an Iowa State team that probably has bigger things on the horizon than Texas Tech. Also, it's Lubbock. Like no one wants to go to Lubbock. Um, this is going to shock people after what we just said. I like Arkansas against Florida. Florida coming off the big win. They might be feeling themselves a little bit. And Calipari's taking a lot of heat for his guys not warming up the other day. You know, they just straight out of the locker room, no warm up. Don't know if you saw that press conference. That was
I
electric.
did see that. Yeah.
And then inverse with that would be the ranked team having not come off the big win, but the other one. So I'm taking Oklahoma over Georgia. Georgia obviously just got the big win over Kentucky. They can't do it twice in a row. And then I'm gonna got two more. Kentucky, Mississippi State under. I'm going to say that game is going to be somewhere around 147 and a half. It should probably be closer to 142 and a half. And then Gonzaga, Washington State, I'm going to take the over. Washington State shoots the lights out of the ball. It's what they do. Gonzaga is going to run up and down the court like they always do. I am curious now, though. What's KenPom got the Mississippi State Kentucky game at?
Saturday, Mississippi State. They have it at 84.79. So what is that? Like
150 something?
163.
Oh, that's way too high.
Yeah, so
Way
that's
too high.
huge. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Take the under, like I said. And those are my leans for the Saturday slate.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Sorry we were off for 2 weeks, but we will be back every week for the foreseeable future throughout March and through the tournament. Go ahead and check us out on Twitter. He's at MingoMade1. I'm at Kyle Cliffy. We'll give you picks every single night, and we can't wait to talk to you next week.
Love you guys.